Hi, this is Mary Jo Webster. This video is going to look at how to use pivot tables and VLOOKUP to clean up dirty values in a column, standardizing values, and bucketing things. So we're going to take a list of ages and turn them into age groups instead of individual ages, all using tools in spreadsheets. Okay, for this I've got just a sample of some death certificate data that I regularly work with that has a few columns here that are somewhat problematic in terms of doing an analysis. Race, Hispanic ethnicity, and age. So in this data, Hispanic ethnicity is treated differently than race, just like the Census Bureau does it. So here we have someone who's white and Hispanic. Generally, we reclassify these as Hispanic instead of putting them only in the white bucket. So I ultimately want just one column that is either Hispanic or what race they are. My other problem is this race column is a little dirty, and this is something you encounter on a pretty regular basis with data. And by dirty, I mean it could mean one of two things. One, it could mean spelling problems. For example, I had a data set where Minneapolis was spelled like 20 different ways, at least. And so a pivot table wouldn't work properly because it would have 20 different rows for Minneapolis. So there's the data cleanup, and the process I'm going to show you next would solve that problem. The situation I have here is that the categories that are being used for identifying race are kind of all over the road and inconsistent. They don't match census data. So for example, all the Asian groups are separated out very individually, but then the other groups like African American is just one big bucket, even though I know there's people in there who would identify as Somali or Ethiopian or something like that. So it doesn't match the census buckets, and I would really like to just have it match the census buckets. So let's look at Hispanic ethnicity. This one is nice and clean. There's three categories, either Hispanic, not Hispanic, or we don't know. So first task is to clean up this race column. So what I'm going to do is use a pivot table to create a list of the bad categories, and we're going to make a lookup table that converts those to good categories. So let's start. I'm going to put my cursor in my data, Control A to highlight everything, and then insert a pivot, or go to Data, Pivot Table. Sorry, not Data. Insert Pivot Table. It always confuses me. Create. Okay, so we're going to have it put that race in the rows box. And we just need that one instance of race. We don't need a count, we don't need anything, we just need that one instance. So I'm going to copy the values out of this pivot table. So just the values, not those gray and blue parts. Copy this, and I'm going to put it in a new sheet. So I've got a new sheet here. So these are my old values, and then I'm going to put new values here. I'll make this a little bigger. Okay, so these are my old values. Don't edit these in any way. Leave that A column exactly as it is, because we're going to use this to match it back to the original data so we can make a new column in the original data. But here's where you would put in your new values in the second column. I want it to match how the Census Bureau does it. So anyone that's listed as multi-race, I'm going to put multi, and then I'm going to, and this is something, there's no like tried and true method. You need to kind of decide what you want it to be, and generally, as I noted, I'm kind of following the guidance of the Census Bureau. Okay, so now this is effectively a lookup table. To make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to highlight this. You can either drag and highlight it like that, or you can put your cursor in there and do a Control A on Windows or Command A on Mac. and we can go to the data menu and choose named ranges in the middle here, named ranges. So what we can do is we can basically give this range a name so we can refer to it in our formula rather than having to use cell addresses. So I'm going to say, call this race lookup, all one word. Capitalization doesn't matter. You can have spaces in there if you want. I just think it's easier to make it slam it all together. And so what this is doing is over on the right is creating a named range called race lookup, and then underneath it's saying which sheet this is. Mine is when I made a new sheet, it defaulted to sheet 13, and then it's A1 down to B16. So the upper right, upper left corner down to the lower right corner of my range, and say done. So now there's this range, it's kind of stored in my spreadsheet that I can refer to in a minute. So now I'll go back to the sheet called standardized values, and our named range is showing up over there. I'm going to X out of that so we get some space here. So and I'm going to turn off my filters. So we're going to put a new column over here called new race, and we're going to use VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUP is how you can do joining between two tables. So what we're going to do is have it look up this race value and find it in this named range that we just made. So we can say equal VLOOKUP, and the first value we want to look up is I7, and then you tell it name race lookup, and you can see it'll find it. So that's the second argument in our function. So the third argument needs to be which column in our race lookup range do we want to return? And our column has, our lookup has two columns. And so we tell it the number 2 to tell it to bring back that new value. Notice I'm not saying tell it column B, because that's not how these work. It just wants to know literally the order, not column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. So in this case, it's column 2 that we want to bring back. And then you need to tell it either true or false. False being I want an exact match. True meaning I want an inexact match. And we're going to do the true one in a minute. But for now, we're going to say false. I'll let it autofill. And so you'll see that it did now fix each one of these, and it looks good. So now I want to do race ethnicity. I want to, if it's Hispanic, we're going to use that. If not, we're going to use this new race. So you probably guessed we're going to use an if statement here. So we're going to say if, got to type in the right place, if J7 equals Hispanic, then we're going to say Hispanic here. If not, we're going to drop in whatever is in L7. And this is a straight up one or the other. There's not a any third option here. So if we go down to this person right here who was white Hispanic, you can see they are now listed as Hispanic. So we've created this combo race ethnicity column. Okay, now this age years. I would like these to be bucketed, so like, under 18, 18 to 25, etc., so that I can do a pivot table where I count up how many people in each age group are in here. This is people who died from opioids. So I've already created a lookup table, and it's in a sheet called age lookup down at the bottom, and it's here. Now this one is a little different in that instead of each individual age, I have the groups, and notice I start with 0. This only works with numeric or date or time values, so it needs to be sequential, right? And you always have to start with 0 in the first bucket, and then you go up from there. So what's going to happen is it's going to look at a record in our data and say, is it greater than 0 but less than 15. If yes, then it's going to put in the 0 to 14 group. And it's just going to work its way through this lookup table. So we're going to have it drop the third column into our worksheet this time. I have the second column here merely for my own reference. We really don't need it. You really just need the start of each group. I also have a population figure here if we wanted to use that later for like a per capita rate. So I'm going to highlight my my range here and name this range. So highlight it and go to data, named ranges, and we're going to create another named range. We'll call it age lookup. And it's okay that it's kind of similar to the sheet name. Say done. And then we're going to go back to our worksheet, the standardized values worksheet, and we're going to make a new column called age group. So now our VLOOKUP, we're going to look up that age, and we're going to tell it to use age lookup, and we're going to tell it to bring back the third column, and this time we're going to say true, so it's an inexact match. I know that seems quite wrong, but I think it should be the other way around, but there it goes. Okay, so now we have age groups. Yay. So I use this a lot, this kind of combination of a pivot table and VLOOKUP to clean up something, if statements to kind of make a new bucket, and then this VLOOKUP kind of thing as well to bucket my rows into groups. And then an analysis is a lot easier in the long run. Like now you're ready to go to pivot tables and do your analysis.